Good day, compensation management students, and a framework to help us manage compensation. So, why should we actually use a model or a framework? Well, the reality is that this is actually going to help us better understand compensation. So, it's just sort of like a roadmap of everything that we need to kind of look at and cover when we are managing compensation. So, it's a great way to theoretically get the kind of message across within this framework. So this is the pay model that we're going to use. It's from the text Milkovich and Newman. I'm pretty sure that most compensation management books have their own kind of model, but this is the one that we're going to look at. So in a nutshell, we're going to basically, well, we've already started to look at policies, the compensation policy, the different techniques that we're going to use to kind of work out what we're putting in the policy, and of course the objectives of a policy. And then we're going to work through four key areas. How do we know the importance of alignment, of competitiveness, contributions, and management. Those are the four areas we're going to look at. And these are some of the things that sort of relate to each of these. And the ultimate goal is for these three: efficiency, fairness, and compliance. So this is going to be, like, as I said, our roadmap or our blueprint of what we're going to work through for the rest of the course to make sure we cover all the key areas in compensation. So let's start with the objectives. And again, these are our overall objectives here: efficiency, fairness, and compliance. Let's just think about that quickly. Why am I doing all of this in the first place? Why am I even thinking about why to manage or manage compensation? I want to be more efficient. I want to be more effective. I want to be more productive. I want to be fair. I want to make sure that there's equity. And of course, I want to comply. So those are the things we're going to go and look through quickly here. So the compensation objectives, or the pay model compensation objectives, is just what I said. Efficiency's got to be a big one. It's all about performance. It's about improving performance. It's about increasing quality. It's about making sure stakeholders or stockholders are happy, and as well as customers. Secondly, it's all about fairness, the fair treatment of all employees, by really recognizing individual contributions. And the idea again is higher pay for greater performance, or perhaps greater experience, or maybe even greater training. It's whatever we define. So I might decide I'm going to pay you more because you're performing greater. Another company might decide I'm going to pay you more for every year that you're in the organization because I'm looking at your experience. And another organization may say I'm going to pay you more depending on the number of skills you have and how much training you've done. So it's whatever the company decides, but the idea is that we must be fairly rewarding people, or fairly paying people. This idea of a fair day's wage for a fair day's pay for a fair day's work, fair wages, and of course fair procedures to calculate these things. And then of course compliance is a big one, conforming to laws and regulations. So there are four areas that we're going to look at in that pay model. I'll just flash back up here. That's these four areas, and we're going to actually start one this week. But just so that you understand what they are these. So let's go through the key policy areas, or the key areas within a compensation management policy that we must look at. So the first is internal alignment, and this is looking at the comparisons among jobs inside a single organization. So we look at all the different jobs in an organization, and we're trying to determine, compare each of them to each other in terms of what are the contributions that this job is making towards the organization's business objectives. Because some jobs have a direct impact on objectives, some jobs support those people who have a direct impact. So it's trying to establish sort of the alignment, or what is core and what is support in the organization. It also looks at the pay rates for employees of people who are doing an equal amount of work should be paid around the same, so that people who are doing, let's look at managers. Managers have more responsibility. Managers are supposed to be doing more complex work. Therefore, they should be paid more as a result of that. So it's looking at making sure that people with the similar types of workload and similar complexities of work should be paid around the same, regardless of the department. And then, of course, we're going to make sure that efficiency, fairness, and compliance are all across the board. So that's kind of internal alignment and things that we got to be aware of, which is what we're going to do today. Then second part of this model, things that or areas that we've got to cover is the external competitiveness. So hopefully we'll get into this next week. But this is really looking at the competitiveness of the compensation. So how am I compensating people as it relates to my competition? And remember, competition is not necessarily directly in the same industry. If you're an HR manager in education compared to an HR manager in finance or an HR manager in retail, you could be competing for that person regardless of industry. But really, how does an organization determine what it wants to pay or how much it's going to pay compared to the competition? Do they want to pay more than the competition? Do they want to pay less? Do they want to pay on par? You've got to make a decision there, okay? Once you've done that, you need to make sure that your pay is actually sufficient enough to recruit and people still want to come and work with you, so you can't be too low, and that of course your compensation is attractive enough that people want to stay. And again, we're looking at efficiency and fairness here. So this is the second part, alignment, internal alignment, external competitiveness. The contributions that the employees make is the third area we're going to look at. And this is all about how much paying for performance is going to have. Like, what kind of role is this going to have? Are we going to pay people more who work harder? Or are we going to pay people more who actually contribute more to the organization's objectives? And some of these are questions that you got to ask. So are we putting an emphasis on performance? Are we actually going to pay high performers more? Are we going to pay people with seniority more? Should we share profits with everybody in the organization? These are things that we got to think about when we're designing, how we're going to manage compensation. Once again, these things, as we know, have a direct impact on people's attitudes and therefore behaviors. We got to get it right. Again, fairness is obviously going to be underpinning here. And then the biggest one of all is, you can have the best written policies, the best written procedures in place, but if it's not being properly implemented, enforced, monitored, and managed, then it's going nowhere. So management of the compensation system is all about making sure that we communicate how it's supposed to work and we work it in a really fair, ethical manner. So if our employees don't believe that the whole pay system or pay structure is fair, then we're going to be in trouble. If they don't understand that there's a justification behind how we determine what job is paid what, or what job is on what level, or just generally, how we compare with our competition, this needs to be clearly thought about, clearly justified, and of course communicated to the employees. Oops. Okay, so we basically need to understand this pay model. It is going to be our framework moving forward. This is it in a nutshell. So as I said, these are the 4 key areas which I just ran through quickly, which is what the rest of the course is about. This is our end objectives here, and all of these are the techniques that we're going to use to basically get to those objectives. So in our next PowerPoint, we're going to jump into alignment.